Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome to season 2 of Your Digital Life. This is the first episode, and it gives me great pleasure in welcoming our digital ambassadors, and they will be leading us through some initiatives they have been undertaking so far this year. We've also got members of staff, Mr. Cowie, Mr. Goff, and Mrs. Eaton-Jones, and we will be doing a Q&A session at the end. We have already received some questions which we'll be answering, but obviously if we do have any further questions, we will be answering those as well. So, as I say, this evening's webinar is about digital wellness, and some of the quotes on the screen here are from our digital ambassadors. So it's notable that these are pupils I've been working with in the senior school so far this term. We've also been working with pupils at the upper prep as well. So these comments are coming from our pupil body. So it's quite interesting that their interpretation and their definition, everything from it means you're able not to rely on technology and don't have to be forced to come away from it. So getting that balance with your life, to be able to be healthily balanced online and real life, not to damage mental and physical well-being. And another definition, the mental and physical balance between screen time and time offline. This can be determined from the time taken from one to be fatigued by any device. So again, a few different interpretations, which is great to see. So it gives me absolute pleasure now to introduce the head of our digital ambassadors, and she will be talking through some initiatives that we've done so far this term.
The digital ambassadors are a group of pupils led by Mr. Ogilvie, who are a driving force behind digital wellness and digital change at Morpeth College, Malaysia. The Digital Ambassador Programme was formed in September of 2020 and has seen over 50 representatives from the senior houses attend the activity through 2020 and 2021. The digital ambassadors were introduced to the overarching concept of digital citizenship by Mr. Ogilvie, and we then peeled back into the layers of the Common Sense Media curriculum. As a result, the digital ambassadors have created the MCM Digital Charter, which is being launched to Shell, Remove, and 100 today. By assessing the digital needs of pupils and evaluating the risks, challenges, and benefits of our online and digital world, our goal is to advocate for the responsible digital citizens here at MCM, as well as promoting the different strands of the digital charter. Next slide. But why? On the right side of the slide is a picture of the book Start With Why by Simon Sinek. In this book, he explains why every business should start with their why, by going through examples of businesses that followed the Golden Circle business model and succeeded. This is the idea that we apply to the Digital Ambassador Programme. What is the need for digital ambassadors? Primarily, we promote healthy relationships with digital life and promote digital citizenship within the pupil and staff body. Additionally, digital ambassadors give the pupil body a voice and help them identify with the programme. Next slide. What will we do to achieve our goals? We plan to curate, create, and provide resources for digital learning and wellness so we can support staff and pupils, especially during this online period. These resources will be shared via the Google site that we are currently creating that will have information about everything we are doing, as well as house and year group pages with specific content. We are planning to release this site at the end of the month. Information and resources will also be shared in assemblies and webinars, but I'll talk more about that later. Next slide. What are we doing this term? Our two focus areas are digital wellness and balance and mindful interactions and relationships. The first half of term, we will see a focus on digital wellness, which is essentially looking at balancing your life online and offline. To share our wisdom, Mr. Ogilvie, with the help of digital ambassadors, will be hosting the first webinar today for parents. This half term, there is one webinar and we plan to host one per month moving forward. Throughout the year, we will also have focus days. Next slide. This year's focus days are Anti-Bullying Week, which we will observe on the 16th of November, Children's Mental Health Week, between the 1st and the 7th of February, Safer Internet Day on the 8th of February, and Digital Wellness Day on the 8th of May. Our plan is to promote these days in the lead up and provide specific content to raise awareness for them. Next page. I will now introduce the Digital Charter. The Digital Charter outlines 6 key aspects of digital wellness at Marlborough College, Malaysia: footprint and identity, privacy and security, responsible communication, mindful interaction and relationships, news and media literacy, and digital wellness and balance. Each of these aspects will be looked at in detail by each year group over the course of the year. These 6 specific aspects were chosen with great care. The digital ambassadors spent the majority of last year doing extensive research and analysis on what each of these aspects mean collectively and as individual ideas. Additionally, we incorporated the needs of the college and pupil body, as well as what we can provide as a group. Though the names at first glance may seem slightly complicated, the concepts are simple and the goals are attainable. Ultimately, the goal of the Digital Charter is to provide the pupil body with sufficient understanding of the risks and benefits of technology. This is so that they can build a continually healthy relationship with technology. As I mentioned earlier, this term will be focused on digital wellness and balance, as well as mindful interactions. First half of term, we will focus on teaching students how to create a healthy balance between digital life and online life. The second half of term, we will focus on mindful interactions and relationships. This means a focus on respectful online interactions and practicing being safe communicators.
The aim of the CLEAR initiative is to help pupils take advantage of remote learning and to effectively continue producing a good standard of work. Each aspect of CLEAR represents a different step which will collectively help pupils to declutter and de-stress. The CLEAR initiative also focuses on the health of pupils and making sure that they are still taking time to care for themselves and not overworking. Next slide, please. The C in CLEAR stands for Clear your desk and your inbox, as this will improve mental clarity as well as productivity. This essentially means clear all clutter, whether it is on your desk in front of you or online. By making room for what is necessary, your workflow will increase and work will feel less draining. Some tips to help with online clutter are, in your Google Drive, have folders for each of your subjects, so you don't lose your work, and add labels to your emails to locate them quickly. On your desktop, you can use the stacks control to gather all your screenshots and documents into piles, appearing cleaner and less cluttered. And finally, marking tasks on the VLE is done, as well as filtering to show you only the necessary ones. Next slide, please. The L in CLEAR stands for lift your computer to avoid tension. By sitting at a desk all day, you can have some really negative impacts on your posture, which can lead to aches and pain. By buying a simple laptop stand, you're helping yourself greatly. Some tips to make sure you're working as comfortably as possible are making sure your eyes are level with the top of your computer screen, your back is against the chair, and sitting on a pillow helps. And also make sure your feet are supported on the floor. Next slide, please.
The E in CLEAR stands for eliminate, eliminating distractions. These could be in the form of your phone, items on your desk, or games. A way to relieve this is by boxing up or simply just removing these things from your workplace. If it's apps or websites on your device that are distracting you, a solution could be by adding Chrome extensions, such as self-control, to block certain websites during hours preferable to you. Downloading the Flora app also helps with staying off your phone. Next slide. The A in CLEAR stands for activate, activating a dedicated workspace for your brain to distinguish and divide work and home activities. Having fixed working hours is not only a personal preference, but it also follows your biological clock as well. There are times to produce efficient outcomes, while the others are for unwinding. To achieve this, separate a space for your body to identify which activity you are doing. Exposing yourself to natural light and greenery can help boost your mood. Also practice the 20-20-20 by looking at something 20 feet away for 20 seconds after 20 minutes spent on screen. This helps to prevent eye strain. Next slide. The R in CLEAR stands for refresh. Refreshment from anxiety, stress, and attention fatigue, which is a fancy term meaning to lose focus on your task due to overwhelming your brain with distractions. It spans from significant extents, such as worrying about your pending essay or just about cleaning up your messy room. But there are a few ways you can help moderate this issue. These include placing a plant on your desk or sitting in front of a window, which studies show to lower anxiety levels. Clean up your desk each time items pile up, and studying with light music, which keeps you in a good mood. Next slide.
Thank you for that, ladies. So we're going to move on to, first of all, actually some non-negotiables, which I asked the digital ambassadors about. What were their non-negotiables with respect to digital wellness? And then we've got some questions and questions which we received from parents, and there'll be some answers from our members of staff. So the girls are just going to run us through what they put in as their non-negotiables. So I'll pass back to our digital ambassadors and they can take you through what they feel are their non-negotiables with respect to digital wellness.
My non-negotiable was balance. Balance is always key, and screens can have detrimental physical effects on people, and we have to work to mitigate that damage. This is my non-negotiable because I think, especially with online learning, students tend to spend too much time online and not enough time in the real world.
Next, please.
Productivity. Are you gaining anything from time you spend online? Physical and mental well-being. Is your time online affecting you in any way?
You do not owe anyone an explanation on why you didn't respond to their message ASAP. This is my non-negotiable because I feel that people can be very pressured to respond to something right away, and they maybe aren't in the right space to respond to it constructively. And so you just need to take that break and think about what you're saying.
Thank you, girls. That was wonderful. Okay, so we're now going to move on to the questions and answers section. And this is when I'm going to invite our members of staff to contribute their feelings, thoughts and answers to some of the questions that we've already received from our parental body. So the first one we're going to look at here is external control using a parental app, for example, be useful as a tool to educate my teenager on some control in using their gadget? I always think it is useful to, first of all, have the conversation. I'm not a really big fan of just putting parental apps and parental blockers on. I think it can lead to a lot of tension in the house. And I've advocated in previous webinars about that conversation piece that wraps around using any tools. I think it's a good conversation to have so that you can monitor those things and you can have that discussion. And that means that the relationship that they've got with digital devices and obviously their digital wellness is a lot more balanced. I'd like to open that up to any of our members of staff, our pastoral heads, and if they've got any comments about that. Mrs. Eaton-Jones.
Yes, you can see I put my light on. And I would just add to your point as well, Mr. Ogilvie, that actually a lot of the moderating of use of apps is done by using some of them together as a family. And so emphasizing that some things are really good to be done together and showing that you can have fun together and you can use different apps together. And that's a really good thing. Not everything about the internet is, boo, hiss, bad. And I think that one of the ways that removes that barrier of maybe I'm more sensitive to this, but rather than the generational gap within a family, actually, if you're doing some things together so that you can see you have fun and that they're the ones that are healthy for your children, that's for me a really strong control by role modeling, I suppose, is the best way to say it.
Yeah. If I can just come in there, Mr. Ogilvie, as well. I think the concept of externally controlling a child, as you could read into that, is not something that works. Certainly not with technology, because the chances are they're more advanced in their use than the parents. And if it's seen as blocking something and it's not understood why it's been blocked, the kids will find a workaround. And as you know, that's why we have digital ambassadors there who can relate to the pupil body. They know the risks, and then we can work with them in understanding the consequences. And it's through education and largely through trust rather than banning. And we'll look at those two key points, education and trust, that will look to keep the pupils safe. But the idea of external control and apps will make things right. Unfortunately, there's not an app to do that.
Mr. Goff, anything to add there?
Yes, just your word conversation and just talking to your children about their online world and engaging with it and learning about it, especially the apps they're involved with. Just it doesn't take too long to look up on Common Sense Media about some of these apps and learn a little. And when you mention some cool character in one of the apps, they'll be like, how do you know that? And then they realize that you're kind of engaging with it. And I think it's really good. I shared a TED talk in my well-being blog about stop languishing and start finding flow. And I was really slightly surprised when the guy mentioned playing Mario Kart with his family who were spread out across America. And I was like, online, is that really a good way? But what he was alluding to was mastery. So he had to master learning Mario Kart, and then the mindfulness of it. So he was disengaging from everything else, and he was engaging with his family. So it mattered to his sons and his family. And I thought that was a really lovely way of looking at what Mrs. Eaton-Jones said. Just there are positives with this online world.
100%. Thank you for that. The second question is a little bit more thorny. YouTube gets obviously a lot of bad press, but obviously there's a lot of positives as well. And the question here again is about monitoring and guiding children with their use of YouTube to avoid exposure to certain content and influence. And again, I would echo really the thoughts of all of our leaders that are talking about this, that having an interest in what they're doing, guiding them with their content. Obviously, there is YouTube for kids for younger children as well, and we strongly recommend that they use that. And also with iPads, you can see that there is the screen time monitoring, and you can see that the time of day, there is a date and a timestamp for all usages. And I think it's a really important conversation to have in terms of sitting there and, if there is going to be time on YouTube, which is free time to look at things, just agree with them and pose an interest, ask them what they're going to be looking at. Is it educational, and try and then guide them down that pathway. I know my own sons love a program called 72 Most Dangerous Animals, and it's a brilliant scientific program. And whenever they want to go on their iPads, I said, well, you can do things that are educational, and 9 times out of 10 they will go towards that. So I think that conversation is something which is, and role modeling as well within the family is just so important. But I'll throw that out to our pastoral leads and see if you've got anything else to add there about that kind of the use of YouTube and exposure and potentially bad content and influence.
I think in terms of the amount of use, we just look there, is there a balance? Are the children getting sufficient exercise? Are they getting sufficient sleep? Because overuse online can affect that. Are they able to communicate with friends, not just through a social media platform, but through direct interaction? And as we move out of the control orders, there's more opportunity to socially interact rather than just virtually interact. And I think it's using those pointers, because YouTube can be a great tool, but there's an awful lot more to life than what you can look at. It's what you can do as well.
Mrs. EJ, Mr. Goff?
Yeah, I hope I would also like to again break the difference between the internet and using the and normal life, and so get used to those conversations about making strong decisions and making the right choices about almost anything in life. And so you have a common language which you use when things come up, and a common set of references, and do you think, and how do you think, and what, you know, how would you feel if I was leaning over your shoulder? Would this be appropriate? And I think also, again, that same role modeling of the times when we've all been on YouTube and you've gone down a little rabbit warren, and then you suddenly say, oh my goodness, something really inappropriate's just come up. And so you share your own experience. And so I've just shut it. A bit like regulating your own, the amount of time you spend on a screen with your family. So, and you'll say to them, okay, you need to remind me as well. So that it's not just a them and us, I think, is the message that I keep trying to get across.
Yeah. Mr. Goff?
Everyone's answered pretty much what I wanted to say, but that YouTube implies online the screen time and the kind of waste of time, sometimes poor use. And I think it goes back to balance, and parents who struggle with the amount of time their children are online, talk to other parents, find out, you know, what times what boundaries they've got in place. Certainly stand by your own views, because I think being on a screen at 10 at night for any age really is not good for you, especially just before going to sleep. And that is a boundary worth enforcing. And again, around, you know, we have boarders here on site, and a lot of them will go, oh, my day pupil friends are allowed on it all night, which isn't always true. But at the same time, that's where we need a dialogue amongst us all to, you know, to set those boundaries. And I know it's not easy, but we do need to set boundaries where it helps their well-being.
Fabulous, thank you. And then the next question, I actually broke into three. It was from the same parent. So three parts to this. What measures are the school put in place to reduce exposure to social networking? Does the school explain implications of uploading personal pictures and the existence of cyberbullying? In short, the experts are obviously the boarding HMs who would be able to tell you about that. We've covered this previously, and I'll turn over to Mr. Goff in a minute, and he can outline sort of the timescales that are given in the boarding community and from a junior boarding housemaster's perspective. So we do reduce the exposure by reducing the time, because there's so many other things to do when they are a boarder. In terms of implications of personal pictures and cyberbullying, that is all part of our wellbeing program. They are distinct units, and they are very much part of the personal pictures is the footprint element of our digital charter, and the cyberbullying element is the positive and mindful interactions in relationships, which was covered earlier on. So we do cover that as part of wellbeing. That is written into our digital charter as well. But I'll turn over to the pastoral experts again, and they can tell you a little bit more about how we make up that boarding experience and what we do in order to reduce that exposure or that want or that need to social networking. Mr. Goff, if you'd like to kick us off first.
I'll be as quick as I can. The bedtimes go from 8:30 every 15 minutes. Year 8 is 9:15. That means the shell 9:30 and so on. Most year groups up to sixth form hand in their devices a good hour before bedtime. And I think that is definitely a boundary worth enforcing up to a certain age. I think use of devices in the bedroom, Jonathan, what's his surname? Sorry. Taylor, thank you. Jonathan Taylor talked about the risks, and immediately they're vulnerable and at risk in that private space. It is a powerful tool that we're giving these young people, or these young people have, and we need to help support them. It goes back to our relationship with our young and the conversations, so that they can feel confident enough to speak up with us. There is pretty scary statistics that they tend not to talk to teachers. They do talk to their parents, but they talk to their friends first and foremost. So, though, you know, we have to be mindful that our kids may not be telling us everything, and that's why it is worth being interested in what they're doing and what they're talking about. And you will notice a change in behavior, and it's really worth monitoring that for lots of obvious reasons. I hope that sort of answers your...
That's wonderful. Mrs. EJ or Mr. Cowie, would you like to add to any of those other elements?
Sorry, Mr. Cowie. I was just going to say, it's to say, echoing Mr. Goff, is the thing about the aspect of communication is we try in school to create structures so that it's not just, as you say, it's embedded in our curriculum, but also to get structures, who to turn to, who to talk to, different ways of communicating, so that we can pick up on the bits that come along, and it's not just dealt with either when the unit fits into our timetable, or when there's a big issue, that we just try and get the structures so that we can tap into it as soon as there's an issue. And I would also say to all families, that whole question about cyberbullying or anything you're not sure about, please ask us. I'm not going to say that we're the experts about absolutely everything. Lots of us have got children who are much bigger than us now. I certainly have. So we've lived through some of it, but also we've got a wealth of experience and good reflective practice and real care about your children. We really want them to be happy. We know they learn best when they're happiest. And we really would want to make sure, because it's not just the victims of bullying, but the bullies themselves who are unhappy when something is going on. And we really want to get to the bottom of it from both aspects. So please, please, please talk to us if there's an issue as soon as possible, so we can nip it in the bud. We'll help you.
Yeah, and just commit, I think that's an excellent point there. And partly why we've got digital ambassadors in place, because they will be aware of the risks. They're aware of the platforms, and the platforms move, so the risks move all the time. But and the communication with your child, the questions to your child, rather than saying, what are you doing? Maybe putting, is there any use that you're concerned about? Are there any worries you've got for others? So you sort of giving them the thought of looking out for others and what they can do to help others won't be as exposing for them, but also raising the profile of risks. And that's what we work with, as Mr. Ogilvie, you know well, the digital ambassadors are excellent in that, just asking, what are you worried about? So that we can act before anybody, you know, suffers the consequences of whatever it is online that they're thinking on doing, but might not fully understand the consequences.
Wonderful. Totally agree. And it's been fantastic to work with those digital ambassadors. And I'm sure that we'll have more and more representatives through the houses and the lower year groups. And obviously, as we come back to school, having that interaction and that social level and that peer interaction is going to be absolutely wonderful. So I just wanted to open the floor. If we have any questions from anyone else on the meeting, feel free to pop anything in the chat. Okay, no problem. In which case, I will draw this to a close. I wanted to say thank you very much for listening. And that's episode 1 of season 2, Your Digital Life. And thank you very much to our digital ambassadors and to our pastoral leads for your contributions this evening. And we look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks, Duncan. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well done.
Well done.
Well,
Ambassadors.